So the number one mistake everybody makes is they think their job is to show up and talk themselves up, right? And they're going to go on there and pitch. I'm going to knock your socks off with the most awesome, canned speech about how great I am. That is the number one problem that people have when they go into those calls. And what I would want my clients to do instead is to focus on pain, goals, and value. So our job when we go to that discovery call is to figure out, why is this person contacting me, right? Like what's going on with them? And so, if you have a 30-minute discovery call or an hour discovery call, whatever it is, the more expensive the thing is and the more complicated it is, the longer you're going to spend with your clients. But whatever it is, you're going to spend about 80% or 70 to 80% of that call having them talk and you listening.
Hi, I'm James Taylor, business creativity and innovation keynote speaker, and this is The Creative Life, a show dedicated to you, the creative. If you're looking for motivation, inspiration, and advice while at home, at work, or on your daily commute, then this show is for you. Each episode brings you a successful creative, whether that's an author, musician, entrepreneur, performer, designer, or thought leader. They'll share with you their journey, their successes, their failures, their creative process, and much, much more. You'll find show notes for this episode, as well as free training on creativity, over at jamestaylor.me. Enjoy this episode. Hey there, it's James Taylor, and I'm delighted today to have on the show Liston Witherill. Liston is an author, speaker, and advisor to agencies and consulting firms ready to move beyond the referral. Liston's work is based on cutting-edge psychology, behavioral economics, and his own sales experience. His mantra is serve, don't sell. And he believes selling should be an ethical win-win arrangement 100% of the time. Prior to creating his training business, Liston was the owner of a boutique marketing firm and ran business development marketing for a $12 million consulting firm. He podcasts 3 times a week. That's a lot of podcasting. He runs 3 times a week. That's really good. And lives with his beautiful wife, cat, and dog in Portland, Oregon, a beautiful part of the world. So, Liston, it's great to have you here.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, share with everyone what's happening in your world just now.
Well, so much is happening. I think the big thing is in my business, I'm building version 2 of my course that's called Consulting Sales Bootcamp. I'm really excited about that. And I am, as you said, a prolific creator of content. So I send a daily email. I'm working on writing a book right now. I'm actually podcasting 4 times a week, which has been updated since you asked me to fill that form out. So, I'm just really excited to share the things that I discover, and I'm trying to learn alongside some of my clients and alongside some of the people who are seeking input from people like you and me. So I'm just, I think, most excited to help people more than anything.
Talking about the content production, producing that level of content, often when I speak to a lot of very prolific content producers, they're obviously using different modalities. You mentioned video, audio, written as well, but they'll often have one that is their preferred means they kind of go to. For you, what would that go to be?
The thing that I love doing the most is the podcast. Everybody can meet my cat behind me here as he measures to make that jump.
I was going to say, usually my cat is right behind me as well. So normally, hopefully he's not going to jump into the shop. Well, maybe he will. It'll be an international cats podcast.
Podcasting is my preferred medium. So last year I spent a ton of time using LinkedIn and doing short updates and videos and, everything that you do on LinkedIn. And what I realized, I have a real mostly hate relationship with social media, but sometimes love-hate. And what I realized is I love the long-form communication that comes with podcasting and written articles, but podcasting in particular. And I love that people can consume it as part of their normal routine. They're on a walk, they're in the car, they're doing other things. As you know, these are some of the benefits of a podcast, but I literally, right before we started recording this, got off a sales call. And before we started, the guy said, "Wow, it's kind of weird to meet you. I've listened to 16 of your podcast episodes over the weekend," which is mind-blowing.
Wow.
And there were several points during the sales call where he said, "I already know what you're going to say," right? Because, my podcast is about sales and we were having a sales call. And the richness of that communication to me is just unmatched. So I love podcasting. I'm huge on it, obviously.
So one of the things you get to do with podcasting is obviously you get to reach this audience. You're in their ears for long periods of time as well. I'd be interested to know. So when we think about podcasting, we think about it often as more as a marketing tool than a selling kind of tool.
Yeah.
So you've kind of gone from this world of I believe you've come from the marketing space, and but you've then moved into more of the selling space. So I'd be interested to know, what was that journey like? Because I often find people that they're very strong on marketing or selling, but it's a harder thing to be good at both of those two areas.
So here's one thing that I want to preface my answer with, which is, as a independent expert, right, a professional consulting person, a creative person, you're doing all of the things, right? Ultimately, the reason you're doing any marketing is to get more clients, right? The reason that you're doing selling is to get more clients. Those things are very closely related, especially if it's a team of one or a team of, 10 or 20, 30 people. You're not going to have siloed forms of expertise. You really need to be dangerous at a few different things. So that's the first thing I want to say is, like, they're basically feeding into the same goal. But your question is, how did I go from marketing to sales?
Yeah, I mean, that move. I mean, I was watching something the other day. It was with Judy Garland, and someone described her as the triple threat. She could dance, sing, and act. It was a real danger. If you were going up against Judy Garland for a part, you were in trouble because they had all those skills. So, and her background, obviously, she went from learning one and then to doing another and building upon that. So, how did you sidestep into that move into the world of selling?
I don't think I sidestepped. So, as you said in my bio, it was always part of the roles that I was playing. So when I ran business development and marketing for a company, I was responsible for both, right? I was sort of the de facto manager of our revenue and figuring out, how can I get some of the partners in this business to be more effective in the way that they both sell and market? And so, everything I've been thinking about is, how can I do better work for clients and it sort of give me a chance to show them that I can help them, which AKA buy, right? So like for you, right? You have to market yourself, but you also have to convince the people that they should put you on stage. Like, as a business owner, that's part of the business owner role. You need to do both of those things. The thing that's really driven me in everything that I've done, and I didn't give you an exhaustive bio, but there's more to it. But the thing that's really driven me is to figure out, how do people make decisions? Like, psychologically, what's going on with their brain chemistry? How are they making decisions to buy from us or not, whether they trust us or not, whether we're credible, whether we're the uniquely positioned people to help them out? Like, that's what I'm trying to figure out. And both in marketing and selling, that's kind of a crucial question. Sales is much more the one-to-one. What happens after someone thinks that I might be able to help them, and now we're engaged in conversation? And the one-to-one part of it, that's the sales part. Everything prior to it is marketing. And of course, there's a ton of overlap and bleed over now that the internet exists, which is not a new thing. But what you'll hear from a lot of salespeople is they'll sort of pretend like, oh, marketing's done its job, that's over. And that's not quite the truth. But yeah, the reason I got into it is the sales part, back to your original question, is I was looking, I guess as a marketer would, for what are the unsolved problems out there in the market, or where are some places where I think I can add a lot of value and the market is demanding this thing, and I feel that the need is not completely met or maybe totally unmet. And so that's why I settled on this, because I was exposed to lots of people ultimately who didn't feel confident in their ability to sell, which hindered their ability to provide their services or their speaking or whatever it is to the clients who needed their help. And, I think that there's a lot of people who do great work and they think that will take care of everything else. And typically it doesn't. So
we're definitely going to get into the serve, don't sell, because I think for a lot of our audience here, selling is it can be a real struggle. the marketing part, because they're creators, content creating it can often come quite easy to them, but the selling part can be more difficult. But before we kind of go into this whole serve, don't sell, and the kind of methodology behind that, can you tell us, as you've been going through your own creative journey, what was that a moment that you had where you worked on something, you gave it your all, but things didn't turn out like you'd hoped. Things didn't go along to plan. And what was the lessons that you took from that experience?
Yeah, so there's certainly lots of failure stories with my own creative endeavors. So I'm a musician also. We didn't talk about that, but when I play my music for my wife, sometimes she's like, yeah, I don't, that's not your best work. And I always say it's usually not 90% of the time, right? Like you need to do enough of it in order for it to work. But in terms of business, when I was running the marketing company, when I was doing digital marketing for clients, I had a healthcare client who really wanted me to make claims. They offered some sort of alternative to back surgery. And, I'm not exactly a scientist, but I have a master's degree in environmental science. I wouldn't say I'm a scientist by training, but I've been trained in the sciences. And so, I was asking like, well, what's the proof that this is better than back surgery? Because that was one of the claims that they were making. And so I'm trying to bend over backwards and do cartwheels, trying to figure out how can I talk about this in a credible way without lying. And ultimately what became clear is that, no, they actually did want me to lie. And that's why I was having such a hard time with it. And so this is the only time I've ever had to do this. I basically hung up on the owner and told him I was going to give him his money back. And they had no permission to use any of my work. And so that's what I did. And that felt in some ways like I didn't completely do my job in the role of a creative, in that I could have sensed earlier on that there was an ethical dilemma there, but it also taught me that ethics and having a moral compass is important not only to me, but I need that in my clients. And, now I think you'll see that baked into my worldview and everything I write and create related to my business. It's very driven by, we have to do the right thing because, not simply because it will make the world better off and there's sort of reputational benefits that come from that, but because it is the right thing. And like, I want to reflect the world that I want to live in. And sometimes that becomes a challenge in my business, but that's okay. I'm willing to let those people walk away.
It reminds me a little bit, as you're talking, that I was just watching this week a documentary on Netflix about the Fyre Festival. I don't know if you've seen that documentary about this huge music festival that was supposed to happen, and it was pre-sold, and it's a great documentary. And the people I felt obviously sorry for the people that bought tickets of this event that never really turned out like they'd hoped. But I also felt really sorry for a lot of the real creative people that were involved in putting that project together, who right up until relatively soon before the event started, they absolutely believed in the mission, and they believed in the event and what they were creating, because they'd been sold a bill of goods about something. They'd been sold a certain vision, and you could see emotionally what that was doing to them, because they'd given all this creativity, all this artistry, whether it was on the marketing side or the photography or video, whatever the side was that they were doing, only to find out they were building something on a bed of sand. And I don't know if you got a chance to see that documentary, but I felt really sorry for the creatives that were involved in that.
Yeah, no, not yet. I'm quite familiar with the story. I don't know the story of the creatives involved, but yeah, I could imagine how devastating it would be to sort of also not know, hey, I contributed to this thing that I never would have willingly been a part of had I known what was actually going on. Yeah. So that's it's an interesting case study.
Yeah, and I remember I think it was the videographer was talking. They created this great video, and someone asked them afterwards, because they all started getting sued by the people that attended this event that didn't get what they were promised. And he said, everything that he created, he believed in the vision, what the event was being created. And it turned out like he'd been lied to as much as everyone else. But I think what was interesting, he said, well,
if I was to shoot a video for Volkswagen or a car company, and then there's something in that car that doesn't work and people get injured, you wouldn't expect to sue the filmmaker or the person that's creating the advertisements, as long as they didn't know that
Right.
it was. And it was that line. As soon as you kind of know that, okay, there's something not right. I don't feel it's ethical for me to sell this thing or to market or to promote this thing. That's
Right.
when the moral compass really has to kick in.
That's really interesting. Yeah, and I also felt as if, I feel like I'm a creative professional in many ways, right? Like, even though I help people with sales, I'm making the things and writing and podcasting and telling stories constantly. In order to have the will to continue to do my best creative work, I need to know that I'm doing it for the right reasons. And I think that's another strong motivator for me to only work with people who are aligned in that vision. Because, if you're the filmmaker at the Fyre Festival and people are being swindled, you're not going to do your best work, right? Like the motivation, the fire, no pun intended, in order to make that video is going to dwindle and be jeopardized. And so, I just think it's so critical.
So you kind of made that change in your career, and you started doing other work. And then you mentioned about just coming across all these consultants, people that were in service businesses, creative professionals who just didn't like selling. There was a real struggle from the selling.
Right.
So what was the big aha moment that you came up with there? And then how did you look to test this and start kind of introducing this and helping people with selling?
Well, so I cheated a little bit. I was affiliated with I guess sort of like an online school where we were helping business owners in various aspects of their business. So there was like, how to position yourself, how to price your services, how to package your services. I helped people with copy, but also with sales. And what I noticed is as soon as we got to the point of going out to the market and selling it or dealing with leads that were coming to them, that's where they were just sort of freezing up, locking up, and not knowing what to do next. And as I thought about it and reflected, so I could go on a rant about the misnomer of aha moments, but I won't do that right now. But as I sort of applied that model to other companies, I was like, well, I worked for this $12 million company. How did we get our clients, right? And I realized almost uniformly, most consulting businesses either have an existing network that is responsible for all their business, and then they have kind of an oh crap moment when they go, oh, wait a minute, it's not coming in anymore, and I realize I have no control over my business and how fast I'm developing business. That was one model. The other model is sort of the charismatic leader, right? Who's like just out there hustling relentlessly. And those people are really hard to make. I'm not saying that it's purely genetic or innate in people, because I don't think it is, but it's really hard to help someone become that person, right? But what I can do is help people figure out, how do I create a repeatable marketing and sales plan and a repeatable system for when I do get leads, and understanding how to source those leads in an effective way. And so that's true for anybody listening to this, no matter what you do, even if you're a poet, right? You need to find a place to monetize your poetry. How are you going to do that? Who are the people you need to connect to? What do they need to know? How will they pay you? Like, all of these questions need to be answered. And so, yeah, that was sort of the genesis of my business. And I also know that consultants, creatives are right at home doing the service part of their business, actually making the thing, right? And the truth is, that's why people are hiring you. So get into the service mindset right from the beginning. How can you serve this person even before they pay you $1? Now, let's not confuse that with doing free work. But by serving them in the beginning, one thing that we can definitely do is add clarity to the way they think about the problem, add context, and help them think about things strategically. Pull back from the problem today to what the greater problem is. Maybe they're thinking about a symptom and not the cause. Those are all ways that we can serve our clients right off the bat.
So on those, I know a lot of times it's consulting, or let's say if you're a speaker, you'll have these discovery calls where you'll have a client that either inbound or maybe they're interested in your services, and you look to schedule a discovery call. You get on that discovery call. What do you find are some of the common mistakes that someone who's looking to sell their services makes on those discovery calls? What should they be looking to change in how they structure and how what they actually do on that call?
Yep. So the number one mistake everybody makes is they think their job is to show up and talk themselves up, right? And they're going to go on there and pitch. I'm going to knock your socks off with the most awesome, canned speech about how great I am. That is the number one problem that people have when they go into those calls. And what I would want my clients to do instead is to focus on pain, goals, and value. So our job when we go to that discovery call is to figure out, why is this person contacting me, right? Like what's going on with them? And so, if you have a 30-minute discovery call or an hour discovery call, whatever it is, the more expensive the thing is and the more complicated it is, the longer you're going to spend with your clients. But whatever it is, you're going to spend about 80% or 70 to 80% of that call having them talk and you listening. So a couple strategies to do that, right? Obviously, you need to know, well, what information do you need in order to understand what their pains are? So one question I'll usually ask is like, why are we on the phone today? What's going on in your business, right? And they'll usually tell you. And rather than taking anything they say at face value, asking repeated follow-up questions. Why is that? Why is that? Why is that? Right? Because we want to get to what's the actual cause of this, and what are all of the consequences and ramifications of this problem remaining unfixed, right? That's what we really want to figure out. So, I've heard from, let's say, videographers. This is a true story. I gave a talk at a local sort of consultant freelancer meetup. And one of the guys said, well, I'm a videographer. What is the business value of video? Like, they just want a video made. And so I said, well, why do you make a video? Why would they pay for it? And he goes, well, because they need a video for their marketing campaign. Okay, why do they have a marketing campaign? Oh, because they want to get new clients. Why do they need new clients? They already have a business that works. Why do they need new clients? And he says, well, because they're going into this new market segment with a new product. Why do they have a new product? Oh, because this new product will give them a chance to diversify their risk in their business and serve this new client segment that they've wanted to go after for 5 years. And I was like, okay, so now do you see the story, right? Your video is the key to enabling this campaign that will help them land clients that they've wanted for 5 years but haven't figured out how to gather. That's what you're doing, right? That's the value that you're providing them. And so, you can only figure out that information by asking questions and listening. And here's a common mistake also. So you're in that call, you're asking these questions, and they say, let's stick with the videographer example. They're like, yeah, we've had the hardest time, finding a good videographer, getting the right sort of feel to the video. And then the person, rather than saying, why have you had a hard time with that? They'll typically say, oh yeah, one time I had a client like that. And then they go on to turn the conversation back to themselves and sort of justify why they're the best. And that's a mistake, right? We want to focus on the client and what's going on with them, because then you'll get the information, that you need. Your clients will teach you how to sell to them if you just pay attention and listen.
I love that about just opening up different types of questions on a discovery call like this. So when we're thinking about questions, how to ask better questions, you described a couple there about 5 whys. The Toyota, that was it kind of came up with the 5-year-old thing of like why continually looking to drill down. Right. I sometimes call it finding the 2 a.m. problem. What's keeping someone awake at 2 a.m.?
Yeah, right.
So drilling down. What other types of questions are quite useful on that discovery call? And would you move from asking, if you want to change the pace or filter down or look to bring something to a conclusion, how would those questions change?
Well, that's a giant question. I'll do my best to answer it. I think that other types of questions was the first thing you asked. So once we figure out the pain, like why are we here today? What's going on in your business? And you're asking your follow-ups. Then I would always ask, okay, so I understand this is the problem. What's your goal in solving that problem? And typically they'll tell you what that goal is. And then I always ask, what would that do for your business? Let's wave a magic wand. That's one of my favorites. We're going to wave a magic wand. You've achieved your goal. How's your business different? And they'll tell you that. And that can usually be translated into a dollar amount value, or at least qualitative reasons why they would want to do whatever they're doing. In conclusion, it's all about the next step, right? So clients come from relationships, relationships come from conversations, right? So we're in a conversation, that's great. We're not in a relationship if there's no next step. So like for me, when this was my dating strategy with my wife. When we started dating, I would always at the end say like, so what are you doing, Saturday, right? That's a normal part of dating is you're always looking to the next thing. Sales can be like that. I don't think the dating analogy totally holds up, but in this way it does. We're not in a relationship if there's no next step. So the way that I would conclude the call is, this is why you need to know your process. If the next step is, it's totally transactional, I'll send you a proposal and, let me know if you want it or not, which is not the best next step, but that's one. You could do that. Often it's, here's what I understand. Here's how I think I can help you. Let's dive a little bit deeper where I give you a proposal and you can tell me if you want to move forward or not. Do you want to do that? And if they say yes, we're going to book that call right now, right? We're not going to let them go away without having a calendar invite sent and accepted. So that's really it, is we need to keep momentum in the sale, and we need to manage their excitement, right? Because they're going to be pretty excited in the beginning. And then as it's demonstrated, like, hey, I'm not actually Prince Charming or the white knight who's coming to save the day. Like, I'm a human being too. Their excitement can wane a little bit, which is just natural part of human nature. But we want to keep the momentum moving so that we have a clear path towards helping that client.
I guess what you're also doing there, the coach Taki Moore sometimes calls these triage calls. That initial call where you're triaging the client, you're trying to find out, you're essentially trying to segment, in triage, you're looking to like, who's the most urgent, who do I need to get to next, and who's okay, I can leave for a little bit, but it's not right now. And so on that, what you're talking about there is rather than just going straight in for the 16-year-old trick of like, you want to get married or you want to go on a date, you kind of look to triage first to find out, asking those questions, looking to make some diagnosis, I guess, and then either scheduling that next call if that's appropriate or not. Maybe actually it's appropriate on the call to say, listen, I think I'd like to refer you to this person or suggest this, because then it's about deciding who do you want your client to be.
Totally. Yes. Thank you for saying that. I think that's a crucial part of this. If our goal is to serve, not sell, right? That means serving the client's interests. By definition, that means it may not always be our interest, right?
Yeah.
And so that also means that not every person we talk to will be a good fit for us to work with them. And so we may say, I don't think I can help you. And here's why. We may say, there's a better fit out there for you, and I'm not it. Here's who I would recommend you talk to. We may say, come back to me when you've done things X, Y, and Z, and then I would be a great fit to work together. But right now, we're not there yet. Come back in 3 months, right? There's lots of different ways we could conclude that. But yeah, I think so. Triage implies, as you said, like it's like an emergency room thing, right? I want to talk to the person who's bleeding the most. I wouldn't necessarily say that. What I would say, though, is we're looking for the best fit who we can deliver the most value to. And, it is part of a qualification process. So my opinion is you should talk to anybody, assuming you don't have so many leads that you can't handle them. You should talk to anybody because who appears to be a fit, because it gives you crucial market feedback, right? You get a better and better, more refined sense of who you should be spending time with or not. And then knowing that, some percentage of them are not going to be a fit, and that's fine. So you should expect that also. I actually published a podcast on resilience in sales and why it's so important. If we accept the notion that not everyone's going to be a fit, we know that we can't win every situation, but that doesn't mean it doesn't sting sometimes. Yeah. But still, that's part of the process.
And I think you mentioned, in terms of quantity of leads, you and I both used to live in the kind of Bay Area, and there's some great what are called conversational AIs, conversational artificial intelligence companies there that are working specifically with sales, who are helping to do some of that, a little bit of that segmentation up front, so that the human being, because you think about it, no human salesperson wants to be on that call that's really, they know right from the get-go their product's not right for them, the client's not right for them. You don't want to be on that call. It's a waste of humans' time to be doing that call. You want to generally serve people. And I think it's interesting seeing some of these conversational AIs, which almost act like a step before that discovery call, just to help filter a little bit. And for some people, it may actually the best offer could be taking this online course, because you're not quite at that stage yet where we're at a stage where we'd work with a client like you yet. Yeah. Or actually, we'd like to suggest these other options. Or actually, yes, you need this now, and we think it was perfect. We're going to get you, when's a good time to get on a call? And what I love is about these AIs are actually helping us as humans, us in terms of selling. So hopefully those calls that we do have, those discovery calls, or whatever you call them, the quality of them is better. So you can spend doing the thing that we do really well as humans, which is asking those questions, looking to do those follow-ups, digging down there.
Yeah, what I would say to that is, for most creative professionals, that you don't need to go to that level. So here's what I would say. If you can figure out in 30 seconds if you shouldn't be on the phone with someone, you didn't do your homework going into it, because you could have figured that out without talking to them. If that's all it took, right? So maybe that's requiring people fill out a form to give you more information after they book a call with you. And then you can look at the form and say, oh, like one of the questions I ask, which I think is hilarious, I took it off my form, but it used to say, do you have the budget to invest in this kind of coaching help right now? And some people would say no. And I was just like, well, this isn't a charity. So I would just say, hey, thank you so much for applying. Here's some free resources to get you going. And if you ever want to talk to me, here's how that would work. So like that kind of stuff, I think you can figure out up front. I agree with you, but maybe it just comes down to a process question rather than having a robot do it for you. The only reason I push back on that slightly is that as experts, and you and I are essentially personality-driven brands, right? People have to buy into you. They have to buy into me before they pay me $1. They want to know that they can trust me. And so if it's going to be a paying client, I think it's hard to put too many steps in front of them that feel impersonal. So that might be something for folks to keep in mind. So
we're kind of getting into talking about tools here. I'd love to know, what are any tools or apps, online tools or apps, mobile apps that you use which just help you be better at what you do?
The tool that I spend a lot of time in that has nothing to do with sales is called Ulysses. It's what I use for all of my writing. It's amazing. It takes away all of the Chrome of a word processor, and it's totally markdown, and I can publish directly to my WordPress website from it. It's incredible. Right. For a sales tool, because that's probably what people want to know, there are two tools that I would recommend. One is Typeform, which is what I use for all of my forms on my website, which is incredible. And the second is Sales Navigator. So if you're doing any prospecting, or just LinkedIn, the free LinkedIn is also fine. If you're doing any sales prospecting, or you're doing any homework before you get on the phone, which you should, you can learn a lot. It is the best source of business data for most people in business. Just by going to their LinkedIn profile or looking up their company, right? You can figure out how many employees work somewhere, how they're broken into departments functionally, do they produce content or not? Like all these kinds of things that would give you a sense of, if you're a creative professional, what can I add to this person long before you get on the phone?
Yeah, Sales Navigator, incredibly powerful. It's insane the amount of data you can pull out from that as well. What about if you could recommend just one album and you've got a lot of great music where you are up in the Northwest there. One album and also one book. What would it be?
Oh my God. For who? That's what I want to know. Okay, so one album. That is a difficult one. Okay, so I'll recommend a classic that I've been listening to a lot recently. It's Donuts by Jay Dilla. I'm guessing none of your other guests have ever recommended that. Am I right?
I don't think that's not been top on the list. So okay. Donuts by Jay Dilla.
It's an instrumental hip hop album, and it's a very definitive piece of music for people who produce music. The one book that I would recommend, man. So the one that I want that sort of changed the way I thought about people and how they navigate the world and make decisions is called Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely. Amazing book. And it is about the subject of cognitive bias and systematic cognitive errors that we make. And if you're driven at all to understand other human beings, then you should read this book.
Fantastic. We'll put all these here on the show notes as well. Finally, I want to ask you, I want you to imagine you woke up tomorrow morning and you have to start from scratch. You have to begin again. No one knows who you are. You know no one. Your CRM, your contact list is completely evaporated. Mm-hmm. What would you do? How would you restart things?
That's a good question. So I think the first thing I would do is sit down and write something, and then send it to people to spark a conversation and see their reaction to it. I think that as a creative myself, as a consultant, it's a slight misrepresentation to say people pay me for what I think. I don't think that's totally true. I think they pay for how they can apply what I think to their situation. But the thinking is a prerequisite. And writing is the single most important skill that any professional can have. And so I work really hard to hone that skill. And so, I would write something and then I would go to LinkedIn and find people who would be relevant to, and I would ask for their feedback in hopes of starting a conversation with them.
Fantastic. And talking about starting that conversation, what's the best way for people to connect with you, to read some of the things that you're writing, to discover the podcasts?
Best thing to do is just go to liston.io. The podcasts are there. If you want to contact me, you can do it there. I do send daily emails, which you can sign up for. You can sign up for it there. So that's my online mothership, liston.io, liston.io.
Well, Liston, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, and thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all about your creative life. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
If you're interested in living a more creative life, then I'd love to invite you to join me as I share some of the most successful strategies and techniques that high-performing creatives use. I put them all together in a free downloadable ebook that you can get by going to jamestaylor.me. That's jamestaylor.me to get your free downloadable ebook on creativity.